Okay, it's 5 o'clock. We cut that one pretty close. Is staff ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Vallecitos Water District on Wednesday, June 16th, 2021 at 5 p.m. via video conference. We have a couple members of the public joining us, so I'll go ahead and read our notice to the public once again. Due to the evolving situation with COVID-19 novel coronavirus, so long as state or local public health officials have imposed or recommended social distancing measures, Vallecitos Water District will hold future meetings via teleconferencing and allow members of the public to observe and address the meeting telephonically or otherwise electronically. During this period of time, Vallecitos Water District will not be making any physical location available for members of the public to observe the meeting and offer public comment. The public is encouraged to watch and participate in the meeting from the safety of their homes. The meeting can be viewed on the agenda page located on the main page of the district's website. Public comments or questions can be submitted to the following email address: publiccomment@vwd.org. All written comments that are received at least 90 minutes before the meeting will be provided to the board, and a record of the receipt of comment will be noted during the meeting. Members of the public viewing the meeting via the Zoom video conferencing platform can express their desire to provide input at the appropriate time by utilizing the raised hand function. Additional instructions for online participation will be posted on the district's website at www.vwd.org/meetings. Right. Director Hernandez, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, by all means. Please. Ready? Begin. I pledge
I
allegiance
pledge allegiance
to the flag
of
of the United States
of
of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you, Director Hernandez. And we'll go ahead and conduct a roll call. Director Boyd Hodgson,
Present.
Director Elitharp,
Here.
Director Hernandez,
Present.
Director Pennick.
Here.
Oh, and I'm here as well. We have the full board in attendance this evening. I will entertain an option to adopt the agenda for the regular meeting.
Move to approve. Hernandez.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt the agenda from Director Hernandez. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Director Boyd Hodgson. Okay, we'll go ahead and do another roll call vote. Director Pennick. Director Pennick.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Elitharp.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. I have not been made aware of any public comment via email prior to the meeting. Glenn, is there any comment either that came in before or anybody who would like to speak at this time?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any. Miss Martin's hand just went up, and I'm going to ask Ann Johnson to let me know if she received anything via email.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Thank you, Ann.
Mhm.
And
President
we
Martin,
will
President Sanella, would you like me to call on Gail Martin?
yes, please.
Go ahead, Miss Martin.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Good afternoon, Vallecitos Water District board members. I'm speaking this evening because I would like you to please immediately add a buy-in component to the capital facilities fee. We in Carlsbad are the only ones who don't have this buy-in. This additional component does not require a new master plan, nor an extensive cap fee study. With this new combined method, the developers would actually pay their fair share for capital projects needed to meet future demand and for their fair share of the value in the capacity of the existing water and sewer systems. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Any other speakers, Glenn?
No, sir.
Okay. Great. Then we will move on to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member
Internet's terrible.
or a member of the public requests that a particular item or items be removed from the consent calendar, in which case it'll be considered separately under action items. Is there a motion or any discussion about the consent calendar at this time? Is there a motion to approve the consent? I'll move to approve the consent calendar. Is there a second?
Second, Hernandez.
Okay. I made the motion to approve the consent calendar. Director Hernandez seconded it. We'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Director Boyd Hodgson,
Yes.
Director Pennick,
Yes.
Director Elitharp,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Let me catch up on my agenda here for a second. Okay, that ends the consent calendar, and we'll go on to action items and start with item 2.1, the adoption of the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. And I'll turn it over to our general manager.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. Thank you, President Sinella. So the board may recall that we conducted a public hearing at our last meeting on June 2nd, and that was to receive comments regarding the Urban Water Management Plan. Tonight's recommended action is to adopt the Urban Water Management Plan and the accompanying documents. Leanne Hammond, who is with the consulting firm HDR, will give tonight's presentation. So take it away, Leanne.
Thank you. Good evening, Leanne Hammond with HDR, and I'm going to throw up a quick presentation. There we go. Okay, so this is just a summary presentation for the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and the documents that you will be adopting today at the board meeting. As a reminder, your Urban Water Management Plan is a planning document to provide information on your water supplies, your water demands, demand management measures, water reliability, and the water shortage contingency planning. The plan is typically updated every 5 years. It's usually required in years ending in 0 and 5. And this year, the legislation has extended the submittal deadline for the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan to July 1st of 2021. And so that is when we are planning to submit your Urban Water Management Plan and the documents. And the documents follow the DWR guidebook for presenting the Urban Water Management Plan. These are some of the key items in the Urban Water Management Plan, the Water Shortage Contingency Plan, and the addendum to the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan to show consistency with the Delta Plan Policy WRP1, which is the reduced reliance on Delta supplies. And these are the documents that we presented and went over at the public hearing at your last board meeting. The notable conclusion from your Urban Water Management Plan for the 2020 cycle is that you did meet your 2020 per capita water use target, which is, let's see, the target was, I think, over here, sorry. The target was 159 gallons per capita per day, and your actual water use in 2020 was 125. In addition to that, the agencies that are part of your regional alliance collectively also met their water use targets, and so the regional alliance target was also in compliance. The Urban Water Management Plan does go over a water supply reliability assessment, and as we presented as part of the public hearing for the Urban Water Management Plan, the water supplies are reliable and available to Vallecitos under normal year, the single dry year, and the multiple dry year, which is a 5-year consecutive dry year analysis. In addition to the Urban Water Management Plan, the Water Shortage Contingency Plan is a separate document that will be up for adoption, and it does present your contingency plan to address drought planning and the shortage response levels and actions. And one of the key changes that is in the Water Shortage Contingency Plan is that it does present the 6 standard levels of water shortage, which starts at stage 1, which is up to a 10% reduction, and it goes all the way up to greater than 50% water reduction under a state emergency action for drought conditions. As Noted. We did present all of these documents at the public hearing at your June 2nd board meeting. While we did have a speaker at the board meeting on the urban water management plan, the comments and questions were addressed at the board meeting, and there were no significant actions or changes to the urban water management plan, the water shortage contingency plan, or the addendum to your 2015 urban water management plan. And so we are including in the documents that no public comments were received to require revisions to the plans. And we are presenting all three documents here for plan adoption today, June 16th.
Thank you, Leanne.
You're welcome.
Any of my colleagues wish to ask a question or have any discussion? Okay, I feel like we've just recently seen this, which we have. So I'll go ahead and entertain a motion on item 2.1.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion to approve as presented. Yep.
Thank you, Director Pinnock. I got a move to approve, and then I got a second by Director Hernandez. And we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Pinnock,
Yes.
Director Elithart,
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, Leanne. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Leanne.
Okay, moving right along. We'll go to item 2.2, award of a task order for the Wolf pressure regulating station project.
Yeah, so I'll take that, President Sinella. So for this item, staff is proposing an approach which will save the district money on the construction of a required district asset. And Ryan Morgan, our capital facilities senior engineer, will make tonight's presentation.
Thank you, General Manager Perome. Good evening, directors of the Vallecitos board. I'm presenting the proposed award for task order for the design of the Wolf pressure regulating station project. The proposed Wolf pressure regulating station is and has been designed, planned for design and construction to the north of the proposed High Point development, which I'm going to go over in just a moment on the map on your screen. A new distribution water line, the Wolf pipeline, is illustrated on page 465 of your board packet. It will be built by the High Point developer to provide an additional source of water from the Palos Vista tank pressure zone to the Wolf tank pressure zone. Interconnection of these two zones will provide the district with a water supply redundancy in this area, something that's very important for Vallecitos objectives. And just so I can show you that a little bit better in the system that we have on the far east side, which borders the I-15 shown on your screen. I just want to walk you through this real quick. Currently, existing water lines are the blue lines you see. The pink or the magenta lines are going to be the proposed pipelines by the High Point developer. And again, down here, existing blue lines. To the south, we have the Palos Vista zone and the Palos Vista tank. Please note the Palos Vista tank is a 4 million gallon tank. And to the north, water feeds in through the Deer Springs zone to the Deer Springs tank. And at the Deer Springs tank, there's a Wolf pump station, which conveys flows up to the Wolf 1567 zone here, existing zone. And note that the Wolf tank is only a 350,000 gallon tank. This tank is very built out on the existing property. It used to be only 100,000 gallon tank. It was recently increased to 350,000 gallons. And because of this, the existing mixed use agricultural heavy land use in this area, lots of avocado groves and things of that nature, require a lot of water conveyance from the north. And because these tanks are so small, a result of that is the Deer Springs, the Wolf pump station is running all the time in peak months in peak flow usage times. The new pink lines, what will happen is it'll provide a redundant secondary source of water conveyance into not only High Point, but also up into the Wolf pressure zones, which doesn't currently exist. So this is beneficial for the district in planned outages, tank maintenance programs, and also unforeseen outages or operations and maintenance emergencies that may occur. We have redundancy in the system to serve this area. And I also just want to note that the areas beyond Wolf and the High Point area are residential heavy zones. So really, when you get up into here, you get the mixed use and higher than normal agricultural zones for the district. That being said, as part of the developer's infrastructure improvements, they will install these pink lines. The pipelines will be the developer's obligation and their sole responsibility. The district will be responsible for the design and the construction of the new pressure reducing station, the Wolf pressure reducing station shown right here. Originally, the Wolf pressure reducing station was going to be designed and constructed after the developer installed the new Wolf pipeline connecting the separate pressure zones. That's primarily it for the background of this project. The district's master plan and design standards recognize the need for redundancy in water supply in this area and to minimize water outage impacts and risk to our customers, and also associated costs with those risks and tank maintenance. Having redundancy allows for separate water source, allowing for operational flexibility, as I mentioned, during planned and unplanned outages. The High Point development has accelerated its schedule for installation of the Wolf pipeline. This provided the district with the opportunity for a cost savings potential to expedite and install the Wolf pressure regulating station as part of the development improvements. Adding in the pressure reducing station would provide significant project savings during construction through scale of economy and also by the developer not being subject to paying prevailing wages. The district will reimburse the developer for the direct construction costs after the Wolf pressure reducing station improvements are installed and accepted. Unfortunately, the savings opportunity came up late in the district's budgeting process, which is why the Wolf pressure reducing station was not fully budgeted and accounted for in the fiscal year 21-22 budget, which was just recently accepted. On May 5th, 2021, the district submitted a request for proposals to IEC, who was a legacy design consultant for project as needed civil engineering consultant to the district. IEC performed the preliminary design of Wolf pressure regulating station back in 2008 before the economic turndown and before the developer stopped work on this project. The project was then shelved and delayed, waiting for the future developer to take up this project again. As mentioned, they came in very late in the budget process to move forward with the development. And on May 12th, 2021, staff had received the draft proposal from IEC, which we reviewed scope, fee, and schedule for responsiveness and revised, provided some revisions. And on May 18th, 2021, staff received the final proposal, which included hydraulic modeling services and final design services after our revisions. The proposal was finalized with a not to exceed fee of $81,770. Staff did bring this item to the Engineering and Equipment Committee on June 7th to discuss the opportunity of accelerating the project, amending the budget, and realizing the overall cost savings when compared to constructing the project after the developer installs their improvements. Fiscal impact is identified on page 464 of the board packet. And Staff realized an opportunity here for savings potential for the district, which is why it's being brought to the board right now. The project is identified in the district's fiscal year 21-22 budget, which was adopted at the June 2nd, 2021 meeting. The total budget amount is $140,000 and was anticipated based on moving forward with design services only. It was also activated as a active project where in years past it was a non-active project. Funding, a very important fact is funding for the Wolf Pressure Reducing Station project will come entirely from water capacity funds. It's not replacement or ratepayer funded. The fiscal impact, as shown in the table on page 464, shows the existing CIP budget of $140,000, $81,770 for design and planning expenses. Construction reimbursement, we estimate just under $300,000. Staff and overhead material services brings the total to just under $412,000, which has the project at a budget deficit of $271,770. If approved, the Wolf Pipeline construction agreement will include the reimbursement for the pressure reducing station construction cost, and the Wolf Pipeline construction agreement will be presented for approval to the board at a future date. Although not currently budgeted, staff sees an opportunity to save money through economy of scale and the developer not being subject to prevailing wage. Staff, with support from Engineering and Equipment Committee, recommends the Board of Directors approve activation of the Wolf Pressure Reducing Station project, increase the project budget by $271,770 to total $411,770, and authorize the general manager to execute a task order with IEC from the as-needed civil engineering consultants list in the amount of $81,770 for final design and professional engineering services for the project. At this time, I will take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate the presentation. Director Boyd Hodgson, I see your hand.
Thank you. Can you just review for me why the developer would not be subject to paying prevailing wages?
That is something, I guess I don't have the exact answer for that, but the private developers are not subject to DIR wages, DIR requirements like the water district is. All of our projects and contractors and subcontractors who work on district projects and public agencies in general are subject to paying prevailing wage rates, whereas private developers are not.
And DIR stands for the Department of Industrial Relations, which establishes minimum wages and prevailing wage requirements.
You know, I know that we've had several items brought to us for essentially sort of rework because of various things. I guess I didn't realize that private developers didn't have to pay prevailing wages. I thought that anyone that we contract with did pay prevailing wages, and therefore we were getting a skilled and trained workforce completing the projects. But it sounds to me like they're not bound by that.
Well, I think technically we're not contracted with them.
That's true. We're not.
They're private developments. They're building the improvements that they're then dedicating. So there's no public project and or public money that would connect them to the prevailing wage requirements.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
That's correct. And it's twofold, really. There's also a scale of economy savings because the developer is going to be doing all these infrastructure improvements. And this little pressure reducing station is just going to be one little part of it. So there's actually going to be a larger scale of economy savings that will be realized as well, rather than mobilizing and constructing just this one project for just this small pressure reducing station. We pay a premium if we handled it that way too. So the savings potential is twofold there.
Director Elthart?
Yes, thanks for the presentation, Ryan. I was just wondering, and maybe you've mentioned this before, but we projected what the savings is by going this route.
We project it's roughly in the range of about $50,000 savings.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments, discussion? I just have one thing, Ryan. I just wanted to confirm that this additional 271,000 budget is coming out of the developer funded cap fee fund and will not impact our rates when we discuss rates later on this year or next year.
That is the case. That's true.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no other discussion, I will entertain a motion for item 2.2.
Motion to approve, Hernandez.
Okay, thank you, Director Hernandez. Is there a second? I'll second. So there's a motion by Director Hernandez to approve item 2.2 as presented by staff and a second by President Sinella. We'll do a roll call vote. Director Pennick.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. Director Elithart,
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Aye.
and I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Thanks again, Ryan.
Thank you.
Ryan.
Just a quick matter of not, just a education. So this is installed. Is there any quality control on that? I mean, they install, we maintain, right?
Yeah, and we will be present out there. Our inspectors will be on site during construction. There is a quality control component to it during construction.
On our, by the district.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, they have to meet district specifications. We will inspect it, but upon completion and acceptance, it becomes a district asset to maintain.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan.
Okay.
Thanks,
Moving
Ryan.
along to item 2.3, the San Diego County Water Authority's Permanent Special Agricultural Water Rate Program.
Yeah, so this item addresses an agricultural water program that is experiencing some changes, and staff will be seeking some board direction on a deadline that's fast approaching. And Chris Robbins is going to be making this presentation.
Thank you, General Manager Prim. Good evening, President Sinella, board members. I'm here to talk to you about the Water Authority's Permanent Special Agricultural Water Rate Program. This item was brought to the board back in October of 2020, and the board approved participation in the program. Agricultural customers, they have to grow or raise for commercial purposes products of an agricultural, horticultural, or floricultural nature. And the new requirement for this permanent program is that our customers get on one of 4 lists, the Regional Board General Agricultural Orders Enrollment List, the Growers List, an active certified producers list, or an organic producers list. So if I can draw an analogy, kind of like back in, I think, 1984, when you had to get the smog done on your car, you had to go take action and go do something, and it wasn't always fun and easy, but it was the new way to be able to get your car registered. The Water Authority allowed the existing customers to transition to the program for 6 months. This started on January 1st of 2021. And the deadline to make the transition and get on one of those lists is approaching. It's on June 30th of 2021. And staff, myself, contacted customers back in December of 2020. They've been contacted by mail, by phone, voice shot, email, information on the website. But we still have some customers that haven't gotten on one of those lists for whatever reason. Individual customers haven't. And the big question that I'm bringing to the board is what shall I have billing do with those customers that do not get on one of these lists and do not meet the county water authority's requirements? I'm recommending that we move them to Vallecitos' certified non-participating agricultural water rate. It's a separate agricultural water rate. It's not quite as low as the water authorities, but I think it provides the softest landing for these customers. And we do have ag customers that make a business at Vallecitos' rate, and they've been able to manage it, and rather than transitioning customers back to like a single family or a commercial rate where they can get into that really expensive tier 3 rate, I think certified non-participating agricultural water rate would be a good solution to customers that don't make this transition. I have up on your screen, I hope you can see it, had staff do extract of the meters and then longitudinally put in where the meters are, and you can see that most of the ag meters are up in Division 1 in Director Pennock's area, but there are also some in Director Elatharp's service area, a stretch of them along La Plaza Avenue in Director Boyd Hodgson's service area. I think Director Hernandez doesn't have any. And then maybe 2 over in, or 2 or 3 over in President Sinella's service area. So this is open for discussion about what do we want to do, and what status shall we move the customers to on June 30th. I may as well add in, there's possibility that the water authority is going to hear this item on June 24th and provide an extension, but I don't have any factual information to tell you about that, other than that's what I've heard, that the water authority may extend the deadline until the end of August. But if that doesn't get approved, we'll still need to make a decision about what category to put these customers in come July 1.
Yeah, Chris is right. One of the County Water Authority's committees is recommending to the County Water Authority Board to extend it by 2 months, extend this deadline, because not only Vallecitos, but a lot of the other ag customers or ag agencies have been having trouble getting in contact with the customers and switching over, and they think another couple of months may help. But as Chris mentioned, there's no guarantee that the board will grant that 2-month extension. So we're moving forward as if the deadline is June 30th.
Okay, thank you. I see a couple hands going up. Director Elatharp. Oh, you're on mute.
Darn mute button. Chris, I was just wondering, I assume we've done outreach to these customers to try to get them onto these certified lists.
Absolutely. And anecdotally, I can tell you that if the customer actually, is able to call me on the phone, I usually can talk them through it.
Yeah.
Some of them are harder to reach. A lot of them have phone numbers that are unreachable. They're in the billing system, but over time, as people get cell phones, they drop the landline that they had 30 years ago. And so a lot of times the phone numbers aren't valid. So that impacts my ability to call them. And it's a difficult topic to send in a letter. I will agree to that. It's difficult, and it's just much easier if they just talk to me on the phone and I can talk them through it.
Okay, thanks.
Director Hernandez.
But Chris, didn't I hear you say that you did send all these meters a letter?
They all got a letter back in December of 2020. And then I did follow-up letters in May of 2021 to customers that really hadn't taken any action.
Well, based on what we've seen in the past, where we don't hear anything from them until it's rate pay increase time, and then they come out of the woodwork about how devastating their water bills are. I think allowing us to just transition them into our agricultural rate if they don't make the cutoff is a very nice opportunity. But I know we're going to get people that are going to come in and complain about they didn't get on the list.
Chris, can you address the issue if we drop them to the certified non-participating and that gets their attention and they want to get back into the PSAR program, they're able to do that, correct?
Yeah, as I understand it, they will be able to do that. The requirements are a little difficult. Some are easier than others. The growers list, where you basically become a pesticide operator. It's from what I understand, it doesn't cost anything. It's really not that hard to do it. Some individuals may not want to use pesticide on their property, and that may be their reason for avoiding it. But the information I've received from the water authority is that, if they're able to make that change, they'll be able to get back into it. The difficulty is if we actually go into a drought situation and the water authority nor the district wants customers jumping in and out of various programs, trying to game the system to their benefit.
What would be the change from the current one to our system? I mean, are we talking huge rate increase?
So
if they don't take advantage of the PSAR one.
Yeah, the TSAR program is at $3.91 an acre, or 100 cubic feet of a unit of water. Vallecitos' certified non-participating rate is $4.75 per 100 cubic feet, which is more. But as I stated, we do have customers that are on that rate and make a business and make a go of it. So it's not unachievable. The real difficulty is if they were to be put like at a residential rate or a commercial rate, and they have a small size meter and they started getting into that tier 3 where it's $9.18 per HCF. That's difficult on an ag business.
And that could happen to some customers?
Well, if we, and here's the decision,
don't transition
is which way do we want to go? Do we want to have some customers go into tier 3, or do we want to give the soft landing into Vallecitos' rate?
Man, what's going on with my division up there? I got a bunch of problems.
You got a bunch of customers, that's all. You got a bunch of ag customers.
Well, I know, and I don't want to make them angry.
Yeah, and I've been doing the ag program for 6 years, and you get to know a lot of people over 6 years, and everybody's different. And I enjoy working with them, and a lot of them have gotten into the program, but there's some that just haven't.
But like to General Prooms, Manager Prooms, if they get that one big bill, there is a transition period as well, correct?
If they were to get a big bill and then be able to get on one of the lists, they would be able to get back into the program.
Okay. Thank you for the information.
Director Boyd Hodgson. Oh, you're on mute, Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you. So I'm in favor of the soft landing approach. And I feel like, the last year has been just so difficult. And I know there are always going to be people that just don't pay attention until they absolutely are forced to. But I also know that there are people that have really been, their lives have been turned upside down because of COVID. They've got kids at home that they're trying to homeschool, or maybe they've lost people, maybe they're grieving. Folks have really struggled over the last year. I'm in favor of the soft landing. I even volunteered to go knock the doors in my district. I'll help you too, Director Pennick, if you want. You've got a lot of folks up there. We can do it together.
Thank you. No problem. You might get an electric bike or something.
You might need it. It's pretty spread out up there. Mr. Gilpin, I see your hand.
Thanks. Chris, have you talked to Lutfi about this issue? Because this ag rate is subject to challenge in that pending 218 Driscoll action. Make sure we've consulted relative to that.
I've broached it with rate staff, and I think rate staff are comfortable with the certified non-participating rate, I don't know that I would want to be the one to have to specifically defend it. And it may be something the board wants to look at in the future of, do we want to keep that rate in effect, or do we want to do something different with it? That's a board decision. And the water authority makes their own case that they provide a lesser level of service for this specific rate, the PSAR rate. So in talking to Mike Arthur about the certified non-participating, he's comfortable that you could make a case for it being a reasonable rate. They don't get the advantage of the tier 1 rate. They don't get the penalty of the tier 3 rate.
Director Elthorpe, did
Yeah,
you
so
re-raise your hand?
yeah, I did. Thanks. Yeah, so in a water shortage or water cutback situation, I assume these customers on the district's rate would be a lesser level of service and would be cut first.
So what the lesser level of services that they get from the water authority is they have to reduce by whatever number the wholesalers require a reduction. So if either Metropolitan or the county water authority says you're required to achieve a 20% reduction, the PSAR customers, the permanent special agricultural water rate customers, they have to reduce by that 20%. That's the lower level of service they get. They get the advantage of the reduced rate, but they don't get any, but they get a penalty in times of drought. And that's the consequences. For
Right.
Vallecitos' rate, there isn't a specific consequence. It flatlines along tier 2 the whole distance. And that is why some customers chose that rate. They were worried about their grove. They didn't want to have to cut back in times of drought. And so they hedged their bets and said, I'll choose that rate.
Well, it seems to me like that might be a legal issue that Mr. Gilpin brought up, if there isn't a lesser level of service in exchange.
Yeah, and I think the lesser level of service might be the fact that they do not get a benefit of any tier 1 water. They get none. There is no tier 1 water for them.
So we can coordinate with Lutfi from Mr. Gilpin's office, and if there's any issues that are raised out of that conversation, we can come back to the board. And I would also add that if the water authority extends it by a couple of months, we would probably delay the transition out of the TSOR program by the same amount of time. So if they meet on the 24th of June and agree to delaying it till the end of August, we would probably also delay the transition and maybe give us a little bit more time for one more outreach effort, another set of letters going out.
So just to confirm, if we soft land them, if we transition them and soft land them, can they transition again once they get that soft landing?
Yes, as long as they meet the criteria. Well, so they have to meet the criteria for the PSAR program regardless, whether they do it now or
Right.
fall out and try to go back in later. They have to be on one of those 4 lists that Chris mentioned, right? So that's a given. They have to meet one of those lists. So if they don't meet on one of those lists and they get dropped to our certified non-participating, and then they get that high bill and then they get on one of those 4 lists, they are eligible for the PSAR program, the Water Authority's new permanent program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sounds clear as mud. So I see that you're seeking board direction, Chris, but I don't feel like you have it unless I'm mistaken. Sounds like there's a consensus for a soft landing approach. I'm certainly in favor of that.
Yes.
So is that going to be the direction, soft landing?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm going to define soft landing as meaning we'll transition the current TSAR customers over to the certified non-participating if they either can't qualify for the PSAR or they don't respond to us. So that would be the soft landing. They'd be in the certified non-participating program. We'd continue to work with them to try to get them into the PSOR program, but the soft landing would be that interim step, which may become a permanent step if they never move forward.
Okay, it sounded like there was some consensus around that. from
Remind me of the
board.
numbers. Sorry to interrupt. Remind me of the numbers again, Chris. Is it over 20% that have not responded?
It's improved quite a bit. I sent out, one gentleman said I sent him a love letter. I think he was being facetious. But I've gotten some improvement, and I've had some customers call in, and the numbers kind of change every day. And so it's getting better, but there's just certain ones that are real hard to reach. I don't really know the answer to that.
And I know we discussed that last time. That
Yeah,
grouping.
there's just
Okay.
some that just don't respond.
Yeah, and I Director Boyd Hutchins said I'm willing to take the show on the road and go out there, no problem. If there's some, especially those, I don't know if you can sort it by those that are paying really high, and that's just going to just knock them out of the stocks. I mean, I know if there's but if you can say, hey, there's somebody who's paying, I don't even know what the high number is 80,000 a month or 10,000. I mean, where we're talking, but some of those top tier ones that are just going to really cause some waves, no pun intended. If you can give us those, if we can whittle them down to a priority,
Sure.
that would be great.
Yeah, we can develop a list of all the current TSOR customers. I think there's like 120 or so, and we can put them in maybe descending order of average use, say average on annual basis or average month basis.
That'd be great. As long as we're not breaking any rules, I could, and I would.
Yep.
I'd help Director Boyd Hutchins, and maybe she'd help me, and we'd hit at least those top 10%ers.
Yeah, we certainly wouldn't make that list available to the general public. I don't want anyone to think that's what we're going to do. We're just going to provide it to the directors to help transition customers.
That's exactly it. Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Good discussion. Staff comfortable with the direction?
We are.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the presentation and your efforts on this. We are going to move on. Let's go to item 2.4, resolution of the Board of Directors of Vallecitos Water District electing to have sewer service fees for Improvement District A for fiscal year July 1 through June 30th, 2022, collected on our tax roll.
Yeah, I'll provide a brief intro and then hand it over to our finance manager. So as the board knows, the district has both water and wastewater customers. For those customers that are wastewater only, we don't send them a monthly bill. Our billing system is based on our water customers. But obviously we have to collect money from those people because they do receive a service. So I'm going to have Wes Owen kind of explain the process we typically follow to collect money from those customers and the required steps going forward. So Wes, take it away.
Good evening, President Snell, members of the board. This is an annual item that we go through. So we've, as General Manager Prum mentioned, we have a special area, Improvement District A, where we have service for sewer customers that are other water districts customers, such as VID and Rincon. And the board has elected to have those sewer service charges collected on the tax roll. And this is, as I mentioned, the annual item. The first step in the process is to elect to continue to do so and set the public hearing. And the next step would be to authorize collection, which is going to be at the July 21st meeting. So the purpose of this is just to elect to continue to collect those, to elect to continue to keep them on the tax roll and set the public hearing for July 21st. So with that, if there are no other questions, staff recommends approving the resolution to continue to collect on the tax roll.
So for our newest board members, just to explain how that works. So instead of getting a monthly bill, they'll get something on their property tax bill. And there'll be a line item on their property tax that says, this is your annual charge for sewer services provided by Vallecitos. The county collects those monies through their assessor's office, and then they remit those funds to Vallecitos. They keep a very small processing charge, but it's a really low number. And we've done that for many years, and it works really well.
Okay, thank you, Wes, and thank you, Gwen. Director Boyd Hodgson.
It sounds like it's a good system. Is there an alternative way to do that? And what would be what would be the pros and cons of any alternative?
Yeah, I would say and I'll let Wes respond in a second, but I think the alternative is we could create accounts for our sewer customers as well. So we'd put more people into the billing system. Our billing system was based on water customers, so Wes can speak to the complexities associated with that. But I will tell you this, there's a sewer agency only that they do 100% of their bill collection through property tax, Leucadia Wastewater District. They don't sell or send monthly bills to any of their customers. So they're entirely through this system, but there is probably a way to do it. So Wes, if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, so we'd have to set them up with their own accounts in our billing system. And, they're, besides just having to set them up and collect the monies and bill them on a monthly basis, it would be very difficult for us to, have any sort of teeth in that. So if they didn't pay their bill, we'd have no way. We can't shut off their water because they're not our water customer. So it'd become difficult for us to actually collect that if we needed to. So this just makes it easier for us because it's less admin work. It's on the tax roll and it's very inexpensive. It's 10 cents per parcel. So, it costs us about $187 a year to do this.
And in the time I've been here, we've never had one customer complain about this method of collection. The only complaints I've heard is about the fee itself. And they would complain whether they got a direct bill or through the property tax.
And again, just from my own knowledge, because it's on the tax bill, those that have their property taxes paid for through an escrow account impounded, does that also include? So it is coming from, say, their impound account through their bank. They don't have to pay it. They don't have to pay like send in a separate billing or anything.
No, it's part of their overall tax bill, just another line item like for school districts and all the other line items.
LaRue's or whatever else. Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
So I guess just to summarize, we're looking for a yes, we want to continue to do it that way. And let's set the public hearing for July 21st, which is the date and time where you actually set the rate. And that'll be the public's opportunity to contest whether they think the rate is too high.
See a hand by Director Elithart.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to move staff's recommendation to continue doing it this way. I wanted to point out also there are water districts that use the property tax rolls to collect a portion of their fixed costs. So I think it's a really good idea to consider, just throwing that out there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to approve staff's recommendation and a second by Pinnock. And then we're gonna, as part of that, we're gonna set the public hearing for the meeting on July 21st, 2021. We'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Director Pinnock?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Aye.
Director Boyd Hodgson?
Yes.
Director Elithart?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to item 2.5, discussion regarding the return to in-person public meetings.
Yeah, I'll take that item, President Snella. So due to the COVID pandemic, our board has been conducting virtual meetings for over a year. Our last in-person board meeting was on, I believe, March 18th of 2020. As the COVID situation continues to improve, we're starting to think about returning to in-person board meetings. There are many sets of regulations that govern how people can interact in the public setting. We have the Center for Disease Controls, we have the state of California, the County of San Diego, California Department of Public Health, and the California Office of Safety and Health Administration, which is Cal OSHA or just OSHA. Those are the main players that we look to. As of this past Tuesday, June 15th, California no longer has the tier system that governed the restrictions. So Governor Newsom rescinded those, which was a good thing, but I think it's created a lot of confusion maybe in the public. So, but that change does not address how business is conducted in the workplace per se. And for that, we look to Cal OSHA. We met on June 2nd last meeting, and the day after that on June 3rd, Cal OSHA had a meeting and they're moving forward with changing their regulations. They've set up another meeting tomorrow, June 17th. So the Cal OSHA picture isn't clear to us, but we do know that they're moving, I'll say moving forward. They're moving in a direction that's less restrictive of how we have to conduct business in the workplace. They're not moving as quickly as the state of California or the California Department of Public Health. So that's created some of this confusion. So we'll be monitoring what happens tomorrow at the Cal OSHA meeting, and that'll kind of add to the fabric of this conversation as we go forward. It's possible that there may continue to be restrictions in the workplace based on what Cal OSHA does. They may talk about vaccination status, mask requirements, social distancing. All of those things are probably going to come out of that meeting. What I'm hoping to accomplish tonight is to see if there's a set of conditions under which our board would want to resume in-person meetings. So the staff report lists some of those conditions. Although the directors themselves are not employees of the district, the meetings themselves would be conducted in a district workplace and would be subjected to OSHA and district requirements. It's important to point out that our building is not yet open to the public. We're having side conversations at a staff level to try to determine when that will happen and what conditions will be in place. And like I said before, we're monitoring the Cal OSHA's actions, and we'll determine when the building can be open to the public based on those guidelines. So in general, it'd be nice if the board said, hey, if these conditions are met, that's when it's time to go back to in-person board meetings, as opposed to saying, let's set a hard date. And then I'd have to come back and say, well, if you want that hard date, here's the conditions that would have to apply. So masking is a good example. Would the board have to wear a mask if they returned now? Would staff have to wear a mask the entire meeting? Would the public have to wear a mask the entire meeting? If the board doesn't envision going back to in-person meetings with everybody wearing masks, then we should probably say, let's not return to in-person board meetings until there's no longer masking requirements. So this, I placed this on the agenda just to allow the board to have a conversation about what set of conditions or circumstances they want to see before we go back to in-person board meetings. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, President Sanella.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. I'll open it up for discussion. I have a couple thoughts, but I wanted to give my colleagues an opportunity to go first, but I don't see any hands. So, oh, here they come. Director Elithart.
Yeah, just I don't know. I'm kind of torn about this, but I think one thing for sure, I wouldn't want in-person board meetings unless the public is allowed there also. Just condition number one for me. I don't know about the rest of it. But
Okay, thank you. Director Boyd Hodgson. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm muted. Thank you. I think that we probably have different levels of comfort with wearing masks, and I'm comfortable meeting in person. I like what Director Elitharp said, but I also want to reserve the possibility that we continue to project electronically, because one of the things that's great about this is people that are homebound can stay homebound and still participate in our meetings. And now that we have closed captioning, we can, we can still provide that service to people. So I'm not sure exactly how to frame that as a condition, but I would like to continue to have a virtual option to our meetings for the public. And if board members aren't quite comfortable coming in, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, if I can comment briefly on that, the first, if we had all the 5 board members in the board chambers and allowed the public remotely, that's pretty easy for us. It gets a little more challenging if we have some board members in person and some board members not. For directors Boyd Hodgson and Pennick, you've never sat on the dais in a regular meeting, but when we're there, we have one fixed camera which captures everybody. When you're in a home environment, everybody has their own little broadcast studio. You have your own camera. So in some ways, the production or the value to the citizens and the customers is better through the Zoom environment. I'd have to work with our IT department if we went with a I'll say a board member hybrid approach to see how do we blend in the camera that's at the back of the room with the individual cameras on the laptops or PCs that you have in your homes. It's not impossible. It would just be a bit of a challenge.
Any other discussion? Director Hernandez?
Yes, no, I'm ready to return immediately as soon as we can get through the, I guess, Calosha's perhaps the last hurdle. But as Director Elitharp said, I do want to be able to have the public available to come into our meetings. And one of the things that I see here is the vaccination status. A group that I've been with for 10 years just identified to me that I cannot participate unless I'm vaccinated with a passport, and I am not going to be doing that. So I certainly hope that doesn't come up with regard to our in-person meetings.
Thank you, Director Hernandez. Any other discussion? I'll just I'll chime in. When the pandemic first occurred, and a year and a half ago, believe it or not, and we went to this venue for our meetings, I certainly understood why we had to do this, but I didn't like it. I was kind of resistant to the change, if you will, and wanted to get back to the boardroom as fast as possible. As time has gone on, my views on that have evolved, and I actually see a lot of benefit in this format for hosting public meetings. I agree 100% with Director Elitharp. If the public cannot attend our meeting when we go back, I actually think it'll be lesser of an experience for them to be able to both participate but also hear and see us if they're calling in via video and we're behind the dais, presumably spaced out 6 feet apart. I would imagine there would be some sort of spacing there. I don't even know if the one camera we currently have would be able to capture us all. It's not nearly as good of a quality camera currently. It could be upgraded certainly, but it's not currently as good of a quality camera as that we're using for Zoom. And also it just kind of defeats the purpose if the public can't get. My main reason for going back is so we can interact with our customers in person. If they can't be there, then I think this is probably the best way to do that. In my opinion, for so long as the governor's executive orders permit it, I think we should stay doing the Zoom meetings until, at very least, the public can attend as well. As far as if we're required to wear a mask or not, I'm comfortable wearing a mask. I'm also comfortable not wearing a mask. So it's really, for me, like Director Elitharp said, it's all about being able to give the best opportunity to our customers to participate in this process. And I honestly feel that until they can be in the same room with us, the Zoom platform is the best way for them to participate. I also like the idea of giving, like Director Boyd Hodgson said, customers the opportunity to view the meeting, and maybe again, from a technological standpoint, I'm not sure how that works. We may have to look at one of maybe our strategic plans that we may, as a board, want to look at for the future is we may want to procure the technology to make that happen if it's too much of a challenge currently, Glenn. So, but that's something I think we can kind of tackle down the road. But for the most immediate future, with regards to returning to the in-person board meetings, for me, it's all about the customers being able to attend.
Can we maybe, Mr. Gilpin, are there any legal implications would like to chime in with?
Well, I'll discuss in my general counsel report on Jim Pruitt, but I mean, you're right. There's confusion right now relative to the implications of the Cal OSHA rules, whether or not a public meeting room is defined as a workspace is a bit of a gray area. But right now, the way it's written, as long as there's employees going into those rooms, there's going to be requirements, I guess, to Director Hernandez's point on they seem to be generating these rules based on distinctions between vaccinated and unvaccinated. For example, the rules, you know, if you've got vaccinated employees, if everybody's vaccinated, they don't have to wear their masks. If one person is not vaccinated, then they do have to wear, then folks have to wear their masks. So I think we're waiting on the Cal OSHA determination to kind of clarify things, but beyond that, they're going to, you know, the executive order by the governor last week extended the teleconferencing. It's going to remain in effect until after September 30th. So that will be allowed. And as I've reported before, there's a number of bills floating around that would allow for a hybrid, allow for and or require a hybrid situation where you've got to continue to offer the virtual option, even if you open to the public.
Yeah, I would clarify one thing that Mr. Gilpin said, just so we're all on the same page. So he said if at least even one member is not vaccinated, then you'd have to wear masks. He meant everybody, not just the unvaccinated person. Everybody in the room would have to be wearing masks. There is something called you can attest, a self-attestation to say, oh yeah, I'm vaccinated. We can't require that anybody prove it. And if people self-attest, we would treat you as if you're vaccinated. But that's something that's a lot of people don't have comfort level with. They want to know if somebody's vaccinated or not, but we're not allowed to.
Hey, Glenn,
have
can I
them
ask
prove it.
another follow-up question? Have we received any feedback from our customers regarding this matter?
We haven't. It's been remarkably quiet. We've had no complaints about continuing to do the meetings remotely. We had a few glitches with the remote operation, but there were no complaints about the premise. It was about, oh, you know, I couldn't get in, my mic wouldn't enable, things like that. But I think we've worked through all of those. So there's doesn't seem to be a big outcry to return to in-person meetings.
Yeah, and what I've observed since we've done this, as the pandemic has gone on, I actually think and maybe we can get some data on this. I know the numbers are not large in either case, in person or via the Zoom, but I think we've had more participation via Zoom than we ever did when we were in person. I mean,
would say
there might
that's
have been a meeting here and there once a year, twice a year, where there was we were talking about rate increases or something that was you know, kind of spurred more interest than other things that we talk about. But where there could be a dozen people or so in the room with us. But I would say on an average meeting, we typically would have one or two customers join us. I guess I'll just wrap up my comments with, it sounds like the governor is extending his executive orders, so there's not a real urgency to rush back. And so much like we departed the building at the beginning of the pandemic, I think we should take, you know, we didn't run out of the building in a panic, right? We walked out of the building in a systematic, well thoughtful manner. And I think we should walk back into the building and not run back into it in a thoughtful, systematic, you know, manner, just like we left. Any other discussion?
I agree with that very poetic statement.
Thank you. Okay. Are you're just looking, I guess I'll check in with staff. Are you comfortable with the direction?
I am. Yeah, I appreciate the input, and we'll factor that in. And when it will probably be coming back at a future date when we get a little bit more clarity, and then we can say, hey, we think by such and such a date we can resume with these conditions in place. And then I'd be looking for actual direction from the board, a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But for now, I just wanted to have a general conversation and get a feel for where the board's at on reopening. And I got that. So.
Super. Thank you, everybody. Okay, let's go to item 2.6. There's a lot of items tonight. Representation on the City of San Marcos General Plan Advisory Committee. General Manager Prum, do you want to give us some background on this and introduce this item, please?
I will. So back in April of 2019, the city of San Marcos notified Vallecitos that they planned to update their general plan. and they formed what they called a general plan advisory committee. And they had a lot of seats at that table, the school district and some businesses and that, and they offered a seat to Vallecitos. They said, because, you know, we're a big player in the city. So they offered us a seat. We had a discussion at a board meeting, and our board appointed Hal Martin as our primary representative and District Engineer James Gumpel as our alternate. At the time, the city said they were looking for people to sit on the committee with some technical experience that understood planning and issues like that. So as time went along, the city did suspend its general plan update efforts due to the COVID pandemic in early 2020, and it's been kind of dormant ever since. Recently, the city contacted us and said they're looking to resurrect the General Plan Advisory Committee and resume the activities on the general plan update. And they're reaching out to the participants on there to confirm representation. They're aware that Hal Martin is no longer on the board, and they know we need to do something to replace him in his position. They did ask for a response by yesterday. We told them that we couldn't agendize it and get a response until today, so they extended it until tomorrow. So I told them after our meeting today, we'll get word to them on Thursday regarding who our representative or representatives will be. The staff report included some options. Could be just replacing Director Martin and keeping James Gumpel as the alternate. We can place James as an alternate, or place James as the primary and have somebody else be an alternate, or we can decline representation. That's kind of the range that I saw. So with that, I'm looking for guidance so that I can inform the city of San Marcos who our representative will be.
President Sinella, I would love to volunteer for that assignment.
Okay, thank you, Director Hernandez. Let me back up a second. Thank you, General Manager Prum. If I recall last year when we did this, I just had a quick question, and then I'll certainly open it up to everybody. And I'll just say right now, I'm not interested, so I don't have a dog in this. But if I remember though correctly, the city really wanted the members on this committee to have that technical expertise. So one thing I would say, just from historical background, I do like the idea of having James there as the alternate, because he's our district engineer, and he can really provide that technical expertise. But I also think there is a role for one of the publicly elected representatives to represent us as well, because we speak for the people. And so I think that's a good balance. So as we go through this conversation, that would be my only recommendation, is that we do go one board member, one staff member. Doesn't have to be James, but somebody with that case. I don't even know if James wants to do it, but and then with that, I'll turn the floor over to the rest of the board. I do see a hand up by Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you. I also would very much be interested in that position. I have very few committee assignments. I have no outside agency assignments. And liaisoning with the city is something that I've been speaking with people already about. I think it's a really good idea, so that we can all be on the same page with notifying each other, since we work so closely together with new developments. So I would be very interested in also volunteering for that position.
Okay, thank you, Director Boyd Hodgson. Any other discussion?
Yes, Director Prum, Manager Prum, is there, are we limited to just the one? I mean, I appreciate Director Boyd Hodgson's discussion about, no outside appointments, but relative to the city's desire for technical, I've been an architect in the city for 47 years. I was on the Planning Commission for 15 years, on two of the major cities' task force for the Creek District and the University District, as well as the last time the general plan took place. So as technical experience, I think I certainly have enough of it. However, are we just limited to the one?
Yeah, so my recollection, when they first reached out to us, they wanted one name. And we asked, would it be possible to provide an alternate for a couple of reasons. One, in case the primary person couldn't attend, and the secondary benefit is to have a technical voice to help our primary understand the issues. So, when they had maybe 3 or 4 meetings, Director Martin attended, and James would also attend. And then after the meeting, they can have conversations. But James was aware of the issues and could help Director Martin at the time understand the technical aspects better. I don't know if they haven't specifically set a limit. My expectation is that they're thinking that we're just going to say replace Director Martin with fill in the blank, and we'd keep James on there. I haven't had that detailed conversation. We can get back to them with whatever we want. They may not accept it, but if we wanted to do something different than just replacing Director Martin, then we can offer that in. And if they don't accept it, then we should have a fallback position.
Do you know if James wants to continue?
I talked with James. He's not here. He's on vacation today, but he's fine. He's excited about it. He likes it. James is not just the district engineer, but he oversees our land development group. So his group is the group that works most closely with the city of San Marcos and all the other land use agencies that are inside of our service area. And so he sees the need, he's excited about it, and he sees the reason why he should be part of the process.
Do Director Pennick, or not to put you on the spot, but Director Pennick and Director Ellithorpe, is there interest there as well?
We've got 2 good candidates already. I'm good.
Okay, just
I'm
trying to
good.
see what we're dealing with here.
I'm good as well. I'm on 3 board of directors, and I've got 3 grandchildren that are competing with it. So my time is all booked up.
Understood. Okay, Director Boyd Hodgson, I see your hand.
Director Hernandez, do you want to make a deal? Would you be willing to give up one of your outside committee assignments to me?
Let's see, what other outside committee appointment do I have? I've got the engineering committee. If you'd like, I would step away from that committee, and then you could.
That's internal.
Oh, well,
External.
the only other outside committee is Encina, and I would not be willing to step away from that.
Okay.
Hey, Glenda, I'm trying to find a happy ending here. So, have we seen does this GPAC committee have like bylaws? I mean, what are the rules as far as how many representatives can be on it? Is there any what are the parameters, right?
Yeah, I've never seen the bylaws. I think they met about once every other month on average before COVID hit. I don't know what the time commitment is. I don't know what the total number of representatives is. At one point in time, when they first approached us, they gave us a list and said, here's the groups that are invited. And I remember the school district was on there and several others, and we were on there. The understanding being each one was going to nominate a primary and I think an alternate. That's about as much as I know about their committee.
President Sanella, I'm quickly looking. They've got a memo online from 2020. It says they've got 12 members. It also allows participation by the public and others. And they do have some rules and regulations outlined in this thing,
But perhaps, and I'll be bold here. If I were fortunate enough to be appointed, perhaps we could have Director Boyd Hodgkins be the alternate and have James as a staff member available on the side if there was anything that we didn't understand or needed to be conveyed through to the district.
I think that would work. As General Counsel Gilpin mentioned, the public's available to attend. So James could just be attending as if he was a member of the public. They couldn't exclude him. So that would allow James to stay up to speed on the issues and then help advise whoever we have as our primary representative.
Okay. Director Boyd Hodgson, do you have any response or comments to that?
You know, I feel like the ways that we've cut the pies for committees is not equal. And that has economic consequences for all of us. I understand that there's technical knowledge required, but you know, I'm pretty smart. I think that with the help of James, I could probably mount the curve. But you know, if I'm not going to get voted in, I'm not going to get voted in. So I do want to make the point though that it's noticeable. It's noticeable that the slices of the pies are not equal, and I think it is. I don't think it's too much to ask for me to be nominated for this. I don't have any external committees. The P3 committee never met until I was on it. So I'd like to be the nominee.
Okay, thank you. So this is a bummer, to be honest, but Glenn, I want to also, I'm gonna make a motion, but I also want to direct you to I want this. I'm assuming this GPAC's not going to go away next year. It's going to be ongoing. I presume, and if that's the case, and if the board agrees with me, I'd like this position to be added to the president's appointments at the beginning of the new term. That way, I understand these are some special circumstances. This is why we're addressing it tonight, but going forward, I'd like this to be on the next president's, list of appointments, and then the president after that, and the president after that, and that way we can just handle it through that process if that's appropriate.
Yeah, I would say that it's probably not something that would go on forever. It's a process that they go through. They initially said it would probably be 18 to 24 months to get the general plan update done, or at least the committee's input to that. But then when it's done, it may be another 10 years before they do a general plan update. And whether they do an advisory committee for that next version of the general plan is up to the city. They probably would. Historically, they have, but no guarantee that they would. So, and I'm sure that they would prefer some continuity and service, even though they know some of the appointees, the representatives, are elected officials that may no longer be with service, like Director Martin, and staff moves on too. But their preference is to put somebody in there that it's not a revolving door. So I don't know if it would fit nicely with what you're saying, but it's certainly the board can direct us to do that if you'd like.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion and we'll see where it goes. But I'm gonna move that we appoint Director Hernandez, and I'm gonna go ahead and just say that part of the reason is not just his experience, but I do recall that last year he also had a deep interest in this and wasn't provided the opportunity, as we know. And so I'm gonna kind of look back at some of that historic background there in making that motion. If Director Boyd Hodgson is open to the alternate position, I'm certainly willing to make that part of my motion. If you're not Director Boyd Hodgson, then I'm perfectly comfortable with leaving James there as the alternate.
No,
So,
I'm open. I'm open
okay,
to the alternate position.
Thank you, Director Boyd Hodgson. So I'll entertain any seconds if there is one.
Well, I'll second that, just to move it along.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I'll reopen a last chance for some discussion because it's a difficult decision. So if there's any other questions or discussion, we can talk about that. If not, I'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Okay, I don't see any other discussions. So let me go ahead. Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Pennick.
A no-win situation for me. I'll say no.
Okay. Director Elithart.
No.
Okay. Director Boyd Hodgson.
No.
Okay. And I made the motion and I'll vote yes, but if if my math is correct, it sounds like my motion failed 3-2. So we can entertain additional motions.
So just a matter of discussion, so you understand. To Director Boyd Hodgson's comment, the pie, as far as the pie goes, I'm on the slivers as well. So, but that's to be expected. I'm at a point where I'm truly just listening and learning, and it's been great thus far the last, whatever, 6 months. But the reason I didn't is just, and again, it's a no-win situation. I mean, we haven't met in person. I agree. Director Hernandez has a ton of experience. But I think the opportunity for Director Boyd Hodgins to learn from James would be great. Her to serve as an appointee on that committee, to go to that and learn from James after, like it was discussed, after they discuss all the technical things, and then they have that discussion. I mean, what greater? And we're talking about bringing people up and learning, and I think it would be just a great learning experience for Director Boyd Hodgins to enjoy, and then have Director Hernandez as an alternate with James just there, but as consult, however that goes. But that's my only feelings. That's why I voted in that manner. It's just, I think it would be a great opportunity for Director Boyd Hodgins to learn from James.
Okay, thank you, Director Pinnock. Any other discussion?
Well, then I'll make a motion to elect Director Boyd Hodgson as the appointee, and I'll be the alternate.
And I feel like I should let Director Pinnock second it, but I'm willing to second that as well. And then I did see your hand go up briefly, Director Elithar. Did you still have comments?
I just wanted to agree with Director Pinnock. I think he's right on. I'd like to see Director Boyd Hodgson involved in more things, and I think it's a great learning experience. So, and I'm all for it.
Great. Sounds like we have some agreement. Okay, let's go ahead and well, there was a motion in a second. Motion made by Director Hernandez, seconded by President Sanella, and we'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes, thank you.
Director Elithart.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Pinnock.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations to both of you, and good luck with the city. Go forth. Great. That actually got a happy ending. Okay, let's go on. Let's move on to item 2.7. The review of resolution number 1450, pages 480 and 483 of your packets. And I know this item was requested by Director Boyd Hodgson, so we definitely want to provide an opportunity for her to discuss it. But do you want to kick it off, General Manager Broom?
I will. Thank you, President Sanella. So at our May 19th board meeting, Director Boyd Hodgson requested that resolution 1450 be placed on a future agenda, and that's why it's here tonight. So resolution 1450 is the district's reserve policy, and that governs what reserve funds we should establish and the funding levels in those funds. Resolution number 1450 replaced resolution 1433 back on June 10th of 2014. And 1433 had replaced others before that. We've had reserve policies for quite some time, but they get replaced from time to time for a variety of reasons. So there, like I said, there's been several changes, but our current one is 1450. So staff does not have a presentation prepared, as we were not exactly sure what questions Director Boyd Hodgson may have, but we're happy to answer any questions that may arise. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, President Sanella.
Okay. Thank you, General Manager Broom. Director Boyd Hodgson, would you like to go ahead and lead the discussion?
Sure, and thank you. I didn't know I was going to lead this discussion until I flipped through the board packet on Monday morning, and buried on page 480 something, it says Director Boyd Hodgson to lead the discussion. So I'm really glad I read the board packet so that I knew. Can you make me a host, please, so I can share my screen?
You should be able to share your screen.
Okay.
With the privileges you have.
All right, let's give this a go. Let's see if this is I have several PowerPoints open. Let's see if this works. Okay. Okay, so, and this isn't really a formal presentation, but you know, one of the things that's always bothered me that we have talked about is our, you know, that, you know, as I learn more and more about the way the water industry works, and particularly how Vallecitos works, one of the things that I've always questioned is why we have such high reserves. And I know about the floor, I know about the ceiling, and Wes can explain this much better than I can, but I've always wondered why we track so closely to the ceiling. And I understand that the money that we have that was close to the ceiling, we had the paper loan so that we could cover some of our deficits. But now that we've taken on debt, my feeling is that we don't need to track so close to the ceiling. So I thought, well, let's look at the reserve policy and rethink that. That's the purpose of this. We are lucky that we have a constituent who has a lot of opinions about the reserve policy and emails some of us fairly regularly. That person worked for the district for a long time and knows much more about this than I do. But my thinking about this, and I'm grateful that staff was able to pull together 10 reserve policies from various organizations. I didn't do a compare and contrast. I sort of skimmed them. And what I can tell is that different, you know, and it's not always apples to apples, right? Because there are only a couple of districts that are very closely, they operate closely to what we do. But, you know, there are agencies that keep, you know, 3 months on file or 3 months worth of reserves in reserve. There are agencies that have a general fund. We don't. So I'm grateful to staff for pulling that together. I am going to be asking staff to do a compare and contrast because I don't think that that's something that I can do, and that I would really appreciate their expertise doing that. But this is where this started, looking at the floor and ceiling, my questioning why we always track so close to the top. And now that we've issued debt, maybe we don't need to. Just a bit of context that I would like to better understand from staff is that I went back and I looked at Resolution 1433 and I looked at Resolution 1450. And what is highlighted are the changes. The highlights were the new information added to 1450 coming up from 1433. Everything, it's a 3-page policy. Everything else is the same. So my questions are, why were these changes made? And what was the financial impact to the district? So I'd like to have a little bit of context as to those questions.
Okay, thank you, Director Boyd Hodgson. Why don't we address the questions first, Glenn, and if you're able to right now, or you can certainly come back.
Yeah, maybe between Wes and I, we could try to address some of them. So Director Boyd Hodgson, if you can go back to the previous slide, just maybe touch on that. So what you see here is the drawdown on reserves, and that's exactly why we had the reserves near the ceiling. We foresaw this period of very heavy capital replacement. We saw the need to address our PERS policy. We saw the need for a lot of increased costs. So we wanted to position ourselves so that we could cash fund these things. If we had started with a reserve that wasn't at the ceiling, let's say it was midway between the floor and the ceiling, with the capital and the PERS issues, we would have been forced to issue debt, not just for the capital deficit, but for the replacement funds too. So the ratepayers would have been forced to take on the expense of heavy cost debt as opposed to cash funding them. So that's why they were up at the ceiling, because we saw this. Now, it may have taken us a little longer to get to this period of capital expenditure and PERS, but that's why we had it there. If you look back at the records at the Finance Committee, even before you were on the Finance Committee, Director Boyd Hodgson, Finance Manager Owen and I have been talking about bringing back the reserve policy for quite some time, recognizing that we need to probably establish what I would say a target, not just goalposts where you need to be between the floor and the ceiling, but what is the target level? And as you do your either 1 year or 5-year financial forecasts, at what point in time do you think your reserve level should be at that target level? We didn't do that because we were waiting until we got all this, until we got to the point where we're issuing debt. We wanted to make sure that we fully understood the financial picture before we made any changes in the reserve policy. So if you can maybe go forward to the next slide, and Wes, jump in whenever you need to. But I think for the first highlighted section, you look at the tail end of that. So the first half of the highlighted section, it talks about the, well, it says the 3 years of projected system. That helps establish the floor. And the ceiling is not less than 8 years of system replacement costs. I think it used to be 10 years of system replacement costs. So the ceiling actually would have been higher in previous replacement policies or reserve policies. So, and you'll notice the water replacement is a little bit different. I believe it's 10 years. I think that's what it says here before. And I think the water and the wastewater used to be in alignment. When we shortened the wastewater to the next 8 years from 10 years, it actually lowered the ceiling or had the impacts of lowering the ceiling.
So Glenn, sorry to step in there. What happened back then was actually that we determined that sewer assets depreciate quicker because sewage is more aggressive and actually deteriorates assets faster. So not only did we actually shortened the depreciable life in setting the floor and the ceiling. So we increased it first. This was actually done in 2014. So by previous manager, but in effect, I believe it's correct because sewage is more aggressive. So we shortened the depreciable life from 70 down to 50, which increased the need for sewer to have a higher floor and ceiling. And then we actually shortened the 10-year ceiling to an 8-year ceiling to sort of compensate for that, but the effect would still be that sewer would have an increase in the floor and probably in the ceiling as well.
And keep in mind that none of these replacements were put in place to cover a capacity shortfall or a deficit. This is all for replacement costs that are the responsibility of our ratepayers, not developers.
So what I did want to say was the important thing is every agency is unique, and the purpose of the reserve policy is to identify the uniqueness of those agencies and align it with our financial purpose and plan. And we've done this over the years. We developed our policy to be in line with best practices. It was developed by experts in line with best practices, and it's been updated through the years to fit our agency's needs and our financial plan. It's an excellent policy, and the floor and the ceiling weren't set arbitrarily. They were set based on needs. And if you look at other agencies and some of the policies we sent over, those agencies have similar capital assets that we have. Vallecitos has $390 million in depreciable assets. Our depreciation expense is over $10 million a year, and we spend a budget for $25 million in capital replacement every year. So our floor and ceiling are set based on that. They've never been set, and replacement reserves have never been set based on the capacity reserves. They're never commingled. They're never considered together. Replacement is what's used to set the rates. Capacity is completely separate. They're just reported on because of requirements, but they're not in the floor and the ceiling. They're not in the reserve balances. When we showed the budget at the end of this fiscal year, for this fiscal year, the replacement reserves were shown alone with their own floor and ceiling. And you can see in actually the chart that we're showing here, sewer replacement reserves are coming close to the floor. And maintaining 3 years of sewer replacement reserves for us, being a growth agency and having that much in assets, the floor is pretty sufficient, I believe, and it's not excessive. Neither is the ceiling. And if we're closer to the floor, I think we're actually, it's prudent financial planning on our part to keep our reserves where they are, especially given our CIP budget of $135 million over the next 10 years.
But don't we, since we've issued debt, and maybe I'm not understanding the connection, but because we've issued debt, we will not be drawing down as much as we thought we would, right? Because we've issued debt.
So the debt goes into the capacity reserves and funds the shortfall. So it's not considered when looking at the replacement reserves and the balances that you're showing here.
If you go back to that previous slide, and I don't know if this is the slide that was taken from the budget page, but the ones that were shown in the budget page included the debt issuance. It showed the effects of the infusion of the $28 million in cash to help address the capacity fund deficit. So when you see these low numbers, that's all factored in.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay. So can we talk about this shift in this number 3.226. It used to be 3.228. Is that part of
And
what
that
you
was
were talking?
I would say that's just a rounding error or a rounding change in the water system
Okay.
replacement. The big change is in the wastewater system where it went from 3.226 to 6.25. And that's because of the sewer change where we said that, sewage is more aggressive, our assets are depreciating quicker. And based on that, we need to replace them more. And that's why you'll notice our CIP costs are way higher on the sewer side. So we're having to replace a lot more of our assets annually. I think it's 17 million this year, 18 million versus 7 million for water. So because of that, we altered our financial plan and our reserve policy to fit the needs of it.
And keep in mind, if we allow our reserves to drop too low and we need to replace things faster than we projected, we're going to be forced into issuing debt. And in a market where we're all going to see rising interest rates, we don't feel that's in the best interest of our ratepayers.
And this last bullet describes what you just described, Wes, about sewer being more aggressively deteriorating more aggressively.
Correct. So you'll see there.
This is new content. This was not in 1433.
Right. So you'll see there that it says starting on year 35 through year 50. So that's when we start replacing it or depreciating those assets in the last 2 pages of the budget. So in effect, sewer assets are given a 50-year useful life, whereas water assets, and this is mostly infrastructure, are given a 70-year useful life. Mm-hmm. And that's extremely conservative, considering that the maximum life for our water systems is 70 years. So we have a lot of assets that are, between 10 years and 20 years that, this is saying everything 70 years. So it's actually a very conservative floor and ceiling that we're using for our reserve policy.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so again, thank you for providing the reserve policies for 10 nearby agencies. I do appreciate that. I'm not sure if you can whittle that down to 5 or so that most closely are apples to apples, but I'm an elected official. I have a constituent that is asking for information. And so what I would like to see is that I would like to see an analysis that I know that you all are capable of doing across, looking at these, and it doesn't have to be the 10, it could be the top 5 that are close to Vallecitos, looking at what those reserve policies are, realizing full well that some of the policies that you said they have general funds and we don't have that. So maybe those are automatically excluded. The constituent that is keenly interested in the revision of this policy has outlined several items that he suggests should be included. And I would like to better understand the pros and cons for including these items. And I can forward these to you. But I feel like it is my job as an elected official to listen to constituents and investigate. So I don't have skin in the game about these bullets. I would just like to better understand them. And I would like to have staff's information and insights about these. What are the pros and what are the cons? My end goal is to try to keep water rates as affordable as possible. And if that means that we lower the ceiling so that we have more money that can be shifted into a rate stabilization fund, that sounds like a pretty good corrective maneuver on this policy. But I don't know if that is a good idea over the long term. And I think that there's probably a balance to be had. So that's my angle. That's, I want to better understand, how can we keep water rates affordable? Because I am hearing from people that they're not affordable. So this is my presentation that I found out I was doing late in the game. And I do have questions, and I'm hoping that we can collaborate and work together on this. Because I've got a lot of questions, and I don't have the expertise or data available to be able to answer them.
Great. Thank you, Director Boyd Hodgson, and wonderful presentation. Appreciate it. I see some hands coming up. Director Hernandez, I saw yours first.
Yes. I went through and did a comparison. It was apples and oranges and bananas on these 10 other districts, that they're all over the map. And the one thing that our resolution has specifically is a desire not to do debt issuance. And I think we've gone through this repeatedly, that and it's been mentioned that we have debt. Yes, we have some debt. We're going to be getting into more debt, but we're saving our ratepayers money by using our own cash and loaning it to ourselves and paying them a better rate than we're receiving from any one of our investment opportunities. So when we do this analysis, I would like to make sure that that's part of the analysis, that we can see the benefit to our ratepayers based on our reserve levels. That's the one. The other one is our constituent, Gail Martin, I believe, brought it up today relative to a buy-in. And I know it wasn't in their resolutions, but I know some of the districts do have a buy-in. And in this whole comparison, if we could identify that as well, so that we could find out what the rest of the world is doing. Because when we did the capacity rate some years back, the initial price was so outlandish that no development took place in our community. So I think perhaps there's an alternative way to make it more equitable, if you will. And when you're doing this analysis, I'd appreciate that being part of it.
I see a bunch of hands up, but before we get off the buy-in concept, I just wanted to clarify. We do have an annexation fee. Is that a sort of buy-in or not?
Yeah, for properties that are not currently in our service area, I would say that the annexation fee serves as a buy-in. We look at the amount of assets and we divide it by the acreage in the service area, and we come up with $1 per acre fee, and that's what they're buying into. When they pay their annexation fee, there's no free ridership for those people coming in to take advantage of the existing infrastructure. I saw Wes had his hand up. He may want to add to that.
Yeah, so the buy-in component, from what I understand, because it's been brought up before, has to do with our capacity fee, and it seems to relate to sort of a hybrid method of the capacity. So that would be something where you'd have to revisit the capacity fee model, and is not necessarily related to reserves, because the reserve policy doesn't address capacity fee funds because they're developer only. The fees pay for the growth, and that's a separate issue. We report on that based on regulations, but it's not in the reserve policy. One thing I did want to point out is that, by developing our reserve policy, which is a solid reserve policy, and having it updated to meet our needs by experts and best practices, that's allowed us to keep our AA rating and actually be upgraded AA+, and to get reaffirmed. Every time they do a surveillance, they ask for our reserve policy. So if we start looking at it and saying it's not a good policy, we think we should make major changes to it, it may affect our credit rating. And it's a really bad idea to do it when you're looking at issuing debt. Making improvements to it is one thing, but if you're saying another agency is doing it better for some reason when we've had ours in effect since at least 2004, it may not be a good idea. Another thing I would like to say to Director Boyd Hodgson is I've actually started analyzing the reserve policies that we sent you already, putting those together in Excel and comparing the criteria for each one. They are very unique to each agency, but I also did put together a comparison of the reserve balances for each agency. And I could even show it on my screen now, but what I would like to recommend is possibly bringing it to a finance committee meeting. And I think we're setting one up for June 28th. At that meeting, I'll be happy to show you the analysis I've done, compare the balances of the reserves, and compare it to our reserve policy.
I would really appreciate that. And I do like the idea of, having a target, as General Manager Purim suggested. And then, I hear what you're saying about our credit rating, but I do think, having another look at it. I mean, for example, we've got a bullet, maybe it's the third bullet that talks about how we want to avoid the cost of debt issuance and ongoing interest. And we've just issued debt. So it might be time to update it for, for sense, but also having a look at what other folks are doing. And, we don't necessarily have to say, oh, our reserve policy has been terrible. We don't have to say that. We could just say, we're evolving and it's time to look at it. And I think it's already on the agenda for the finance committee. So
Yeah.
thank you.
So the debt issuance though is for the capacity fund again. It's not for the replacement fund. So the reserve policy wouldn't apply to that. So the capacity fee model states that growth will pay for growth. And again, the only two proceeds we get for that are developer fees or for debt issuance. So this is a capacity issue with our current debt issuance. We're not looking at paying for replacement of existing infrastructure. And the
Okay,
reserve
separate
policy,
issue. Right,
yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, I like our reserve policy. I'm certainly open-minded to looking at it. I think that's good business. We should do our due diligence as a board and always look for ways to continuously improve all of our policies. For the most part, when I got onto the board back in 2014, it was our finance manager was Tom Scaglione, our general manager was Dennis Lamb, and we had similar conversations. And I asked the same question: how did you determine the rails, right, the ceiling and the floor? Because I'm like, just adjust them and everything will be fine, right? I mean, that's kind of the first thing that kind of pops in new board members' minds. And then they explained it to me back then that this is why they had it, and they also explained at that time that that the reason why the trend line for our reserve amounts were trending upwards towards closer to the ceiling is because looking out over the horizon into the future, these capital projects were coming, and they were preparing for those by building up slowly but steadily, building up the reserves over time, so it kind of smoothed out the impact to our customers, so they didn't just get this one hit at the time that we were going to build, or that at the time that we had to go out to debt. And it made a lot of sense. And when our current administration came on board with Glenn, yeah, he and Wes, basically the story was the same. So I like that approach. It makes a lot of sense to me as both a board member and a customer. I do think um, in general, we should try to manage more to the middle. If you have any kind of parameters, you always kind of want to take a moderate approach and try to find that sweet spot in the middle. But having said that, you got to have the flexibility to plan for what might be coming down the road, and be prepared to fund those projects when they're needed. And so I could see where that, even though if we did have a target that was somewhere closer to the mid-range of our parameters, that there's going to be still times that it just makes good sense to let it creep up a little bit, or in some cases, if we want to make an investment on something or maybe fix something earlier. The other thing is we have a major earthquake, and next thing you know, we're fixing things we didn't think we were going to have to fix. It's really nice to have that reserve fund in there so you can draw from that in an emergency situation. Which I've seen major water main breaks within our system, not earthquake related, but other, it's getting hot right now as we approach the summer. Every summer since I've been on this board, we get water main breaks because of the pipes, the heat, the effect that the temperatures have on the pipes and expanding, and the water pressure and everything else. I'm sorry, Ed's freaking out, but I didn't know this in 2014 when I got on the board, but every single summer they start popping, right? And that they're millions of dollars. And so I also, because I've been around the community a long time, and I've kind of always had one foot in the door in our local government. Not all the other agencies and municipalities in our area, not just San Marcos, but others in North County, they've got caught without reserves, and it's really hurt them. And as somebody who's just personally fiscally conservative and with my own personal finances, and having a little bit of a rainy day fund in case something happens unforeseen, I feel like that's good business and good practice for our district as well. So while I'm totally open-minded to looking at it and making adjustments, I'm pretty happy with the current one as well. And the last thing I want to say is it's very important, because I do know that this can be kind of a hot button item for our constituents. So it's very important that the messages that we put out are accurate. And I know that the one constituent that was mentioned earlier, is putting out a bit of a narrative that the reason why we had our reserves up near the top was because we had this paper loan and we were using that additional funding to offset the deficit and the capacity. That's not what I've never heard that before until just recently. I do not believe that is true at all. If there's any other of my colleagues that see it a different way, I'm open to please convince me, tell me, inform, educate me. But that is a completely false narrative, and not a true statement whatsoever. And I think that it kind of spreads a little bit of confusion with the rest of our constituents, and it causes a little bit more error. People get a little. It's something that everybody gets kind of in the frenzy when they think, why am I subsidizing developers? But if they're not, and that's not why our reserve levels were so high, we shouldn't be telling them that. And so I don't know how we address that in the public, but I do think that when we need to maybe do some public relations around that or some education around that, but that doesn't help the situation.
So if I could add also the main purposes of having reserves are, and this is something that we've been great at over the years, are to provide stable rates to our customers, to make sure we have well-maintained infrastructure, so replacement of assets, to make sure we have access to financing, so to keep our credit rating and even improve our credit rating, and also to plan for volatility and uncertainty for emergency situations. Those are the reasons we have our reserves. And by having a ceiling, it makes sure we don't have excessive reserves, and that ceiling is prudent. And I believe the district has done a great job in our reserve policy and keeping our reserves.
And I would add to that, we're an infrastructure heavy industry, and we're here for the long haul, right? So we don't want to react too quickly to certain things. So if we wanted to establish a target for our reserve level, we don't want to do that in any 1 year period. I would say we'd always want to take a longer look, like 5 years. 5 years out should be our target to get to that level, because otherwise our rates are going to be swinging up and down every year. In the good years, people will be happy. In the bad years, they're going to be very upset. You're going to get double-digit rate increases to make up because you had a big capital expenditure the previous year. And like Wes said, we're trying to get stability in the rates. We're trying to keep rates as low as possible, but we're trying to keep them predictable and stable as well.
Just so I can chime in, that's okay, President Snella?
Absolutely.
No, I agree with a lot of what's been said. Some points of concern and just my own perspective as well. I too agree with a lot of what President Snella said. I like our reserve policy, and so I don't know. We don't need to do a whole revamping like might have been discussed. Just a tweak here or there. But I do like the ceiling. I mean, the view is always better from top. You can see things a little bit better when you're not stressed. And when you have that, I mean, from an insurance perspective, I'm in insurance business. All companies are rated on surplus. They all have surplus. Those who have fewer surplus are rated the Bs and the B minuses. Those who have good surpluses get A ratings. And like what Wes was saying, that's how we get such a low interest rate when we're looking for money. And if we're in dire need, but I like being at the top. I'm sitting at the top of I'm looking out right now and the view's beautiful because I can see from up here a little bit better, and it's better than when we're kind of squandering down there in the floor. And just to be fair, and Wes, I don't know. I mean, there's a big ask from you, and I know you've been asked to do a lot. Is that a reasonable ask? I mean, just for your time and energy that you're spent towards this. I mean, I just don't want you to be overworked or overtaxed, because I know you're doing other stuff on a daily basis. So there's a concern there as far as what we're asking you, and if it's reasonable, and if you have time, energy, and staff. I just don't want you to be overtaxed on that.
I appreciate that, but no, it's not too much of an ask. We researched the reserve policies. It's pretty getting them is pretty easy. Looking through them, some of them can be, there's some detail in there, but it is good to do. We actually have, one of the best practices says we will benchmark, right? So on a periodic basis, we'll compare ourselves to other agencies, look at standard practices and industry best practices. So I'm happy to do it, put them all together. And the goal is really to find water districts and agencies that have similar criteria to ours, that have similar asset levels and reserve needs. So no, it's not too much to ask. I'm happy to do it. I've already done some of the comparisons and the benchmarking. So it's
Okay. No, thank you. I know like what Director Hernandez said, they're apples, oranges, and bananas, but at least they're all fruit.
Yeah.
Director Hernandez?
Yes, Wes, when you're doing this analysis, would you also put in the water and sewer rates so we can see a comparison there? I continually hear I believe we're right in the middle, but sometimes I hear people say we're the highest in the county, and I don't believe that to be true. But if we could put that on paper, Wes, then we'll be able to point something when our constituents make a mistake like that.
I'll be happy to ask Mike to do that for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Director Hernandez, you said we're in the middle, but if my memory serves me correctly, I think we're actually at the highest, we're in the lowest third, but we might even be even lower.
Yeah,
I don't even think we're close to the middle.
Well, I wanted to be conservative in my statement because I didn't
understand.
know.
Yeah, and President Sanella, we're happy to do the analysis, but anytime we do analysis, we like to hope that it leads to something. And I don't want the success to be that everybody's happy, right? Then there's a certain segment of the community that's not going to be happy with no matter what we come back with. So I'd like to think that what we present, the board will hopefully vote on, and then we can move forward because every time we try to answer some questions from the public, it just spurs 3 more questions. So, and that's what I fear will come out of this as well.
And the same questions.
Go ahead.
I think it's an educational sort of deep dive that would benefit me as a new board member. I think it's always a good idea for us to understand where we fall as far as rates versus other agencies. I think that's something that I would love to get annually, just because it's a great talking point. It's a great, when we're interacting with the public and the public is saying the water rates are too high, it may not be exactly what they want to hear, but we could say, well, look, it's less than Olivenhain or it's less than Rincon. And, to President Sanella's point, President Sanella wants people to move here for their water district. So if our rates are low and we can go out into the public and talk about that, then that's a real benefit to us too. So I that's greatly appreciated. And I know it's time consuming, but thank you.
Yeah, I think you'll all be really happy when you see the results of that rate comparison. And typically, Director Boyd Hodgson, we do it every year because normally we have a rate setting process every year and we go through the Prop 218 process. And as part of that, we always do a rate comparison with our surrounding neighbors. Because of COVID, we've held off on any rate increases. So it has been a while, but I have asked staff to start to assemble that. And the preliminary data is very encouraging. I know you'll be happy when you see it.
Okay. So is staff comfortable with the direction that you've received?
Yeah, I think so. So my plan is that we'll come forward to the next, probably the June 28th Finance Committee meeting to continue the conversation. And then the Finance Committee can help guide us as to when and if it resurfaces at the board level with a reserve conversation.
So the policies will resurface at the board level in the debt issuance process. And they were scheduled to be for the July 7th meeting. But if not the 7th, then the 21st meeting.
Okay. Any other discussion before we move on? Okay, and thank you again, Director Boyd Hodgson, for the presentation. I know that it sure seemed like it probably took a little bit of effort and some time and work, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, let's go on to item 2.8, California Special Districts Association Board Elections.
Yeah, this is our last action item tonight. So CSDA is conducting an election to fill their board seat A position, which is in the Southern Network. The term will run through December 31st, 2024. Vallecitos, as a member agency of CSDA, is allowed to submit one vote for one candidate on the ballot. And the list of candidates is included on page 484 of the board packet. So we're looking for the board's direction if we want to place a vote, and if so, for who. And we'll take the board's direction and submit a ballot on behalf of Vallecitos. So with that, I turn it back to you, President Sinella.
Okay, I'll open it up to my colleagues. Is there any recommendations, discussions, questions? Director Elithorpe, I see your hand up.
Thank you, President Snella. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to support the incumbent, Joe McKenzie. I think she's done a great job for us over the years, and I would like to see her continue in that role.
Okay. Just to keep the conversation going, I will second that motion. I've known Joe McKenzie for a very long time, and mostly just through her activity with the California Special Districts Association, and she's one of those board members over there that really leads, puts in the time, puts in the effort. She's been to our district to make presentations before COVID, of course, on a number of occasions, and I believe she was actually came and did a here on Zoom even during COVID. So I think she's deserving of another term, and so I'll second that. But I'll continue the conversation and discussion and questions from my colleagues. And I see a hand, Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you. You know, it's important for me that people do the work and show up. And I was really impressed that she came to our district to ask for our vote. And so I fully support that motion and second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Director Boyd Hodgson,
Yes.
Director Elithorpe,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Pennock,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes our action items this evening, and so we'll go into reports. General Manager.
Now you're on mute.
We've all kind of stumbled over that one tonight.
Sorry about that. So I have 3 items to report tonight. I'll try to make them quick. So the district is in the process of conducting closed circuit TV and sonar condition assessment of our primary sewer land outfall, which runs from El Camino Real all the way to the Encina Wastewater Authority. The work is well underway, and most of the gravity sections have already been inspected, which is great. We're in the process of inspecting what are called the siphon sections, and these are the ones that kind of dip down and then come back up. And they're different because they're constantly submerged underwater, and the technique is a little bit different. So I just want to inform the board that tonight we will be inspecting what we call siphon number 3, which is in the most westerly reach of the land outfall right before we get to the Encina Wastewater Authority. Our contractor will actually be setting up in the parking lot of the Motel 6 that's along Paseo del Norte, just south of Palomar Airport Road in the city of Carlsbad. And given its location, it's unlikely that we will receive any feedback or any calls. But I just wanted the board to know that we've been coordinating this work really closely with not just the city of Carlsbad, but with the motel itself. It's just an overnight thing. It shouldn't take that long, but we will be out there doing some work. So big picture, the good news is of the condition assessment that we've performed, we have not encountered any serious problems with the pipe, and that's really good news. Upon the completion of the field inspection work, a report will be prepared, which will identify any areas that need attention, and they'll put them into categories, whether it's urgent or something that can wait or something in the middle. Staff will bring that report to the engineering committee, and then recommendations will be made to the board depending on what's in the report and the direction of the engineering committee. So it's one of our biggest assets. It's a really critical piece of infrastructure, so taking a look at it is the prudent thing to do. So kind of in the same theme, my second item, I just want to inform the board that Vallecitos work crews will be performing some night work on district facilities in the shopping center area between Nordal and the Costco. So that kind of that Walmart center there. We're going to be replacing some water valves. The work will actually begin next Tuesday, June 21st, and it'll be night work. So we're going to start at 10 p.m. and it's night work because we don't want to affect the businesses in there. So the work will begin at 10 p.m. It'll go to the morning hours. We'll be out of there before the businesses open, and that'll be kind of the preparatory work to expose the valve. And then 2 nights later, on Thursday, June 23rd, we'll be actually replacing the valves, and that work will begin at midnight and should be, again, completed before businesses open in the next day. We've coordinated all this work with all the merchants that might be impacted. And we always do the best job that we can to make sure that we're treating our customers with the utmost amount of respect, particularly when it's a commercial business. We don't want to be out there in the middle of the day and shutting down their parking lot and ruining traffic circulation. So we're doing the best we can. It certainly results in a little extra cost. There's overtime and late night work, but it was the right thing to do. The last thing I wanted to mention is the board will recall that you directed staff to process refunds to our ratepayers based on the money that we received from the County Water Authority's settlement of their lawsuit with Metropolitan Water District. So it took a lot of time to get this right, but we're in the process of sending out those refunds as we speak. It's going to take about a month because we break all of our customers into a monthly billing cycle. So we don't have one day per month that we send out all the bills. It happens over the course of the month. So it's already started and it'll take place through kind of mid-July before all of our customers are reached. And as a reminder, the refund for an average eligible customer is about $55. People with larger meters get a larger refund, but the average customer is about $55. And that's all I had to report tonight.
Okay, thank you. District Legal Counsel.
Thank you, President Snella. I touched on the governor's orders rescinding his prior executive actions. As I mentioned, the suspension of the Brown Act teleconference term, it will remain in place until September 30th. In addition, the water shutoff moratoriums will remain in place until September 30th. And as Glenn mentioned and I mentioned, Cal OSHA is meeting tomorrow. It's expected that those regulations hopefully clarify how all this stuff is supposed to fit together. That's all I have to report tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Don't see any questions at this time. Director Elitharp, San Diego County Water Authority.
Thank you, President Snell. The Water Authority conducted 3 board budget workshops, 8th and 10th and 15th of June. That was to review the proposed FY22 and 23 2-year budget. The workshops were a thorough process that reviewed each department in, I would say, excruciating detail. And that included each department's functions, their past recent accomplishments, the budget drivers affecting each one, and the cost containment measures that each department had put forth in the proposed budget. So at next week's June board meeting, and that's on the 24th, Thursday, the board will be considering adoption of that proposed budget. So that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. Capital improvement for Encina, Director Hernandez.
Yes, we had our capital improvement meeting this morning, and we discussed the year's improvement project status relative to design. The digester improvement design is 100%. On the construction side, the network improvement project phase 2, the fiber optics trenching and installation is ongoing. The flow equalization basin project is ongoing. The peak flow management plan update, which was started in 1999 and updated in 203, 205, 211, and we're updating it in 220, is in process. And the good news is we've reduced the total volume by 25%. So it looks like our expansion can be a little slower. SCADA, I believe it's the supervisory control and data access is ongoing. And we have a consultant, Enterprise Automation, that we just awarded a contract for $879,291, and a Rockwell Construction Services contract for making a round total of $966,411. And those amounts will be borne by Carlsbad, because this is their wastewater facility that we're upgrading. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Director Hernandez. Your meeting was much longer than ours, it sounds like. The Policy and Finance Committee for Encina met on June 8th. We had one item. It was a relatively quick meeting. It was kind of a weird item, though. What they were sharing with us and giving us a briefing on an item before it goes to the full board for approval is this agricultural mitigation fee that Carlsbad has, that they levy on different, I guess, agencies to it's all based off of how much agricultural land they have. And it was a little bit confusing, but they have a fee that basically Encina and others have to pay into that we hadn't paid into. This policy Carlsbad it was there since the 90s, and it was $10,000. So it's $10,000 today, but it can be adjusted. But we never paid it. It's a one-time fee to mitigate their agricultural lands. And so I asked the question, being a new Encina board member, I'm like, we haven't paid it since, it's been out there since 1994. Apparently we haven't paid it. Why now? Right. And apparently, I guess it just kind of fell through the cracks. And Carlsbad kind of raised the issue recently because it came up with another agency. And the Encina staff's recommendation was, we need to pay it as soon as we can, because it's $10,000 now, and that was what it was in 1994. And when they start looking at it closer, they're going to raise it. So once you pay for it, you're done with it once and for all. So that's what that was the one item we discussed, and it's going to be going to the full board at the next full board meeting. And that's all. That was the only item on our agenda that day. 3.5 standing committees. The Finance Committee has not met, but as you guys heard earlier, we're going to be meeting on the 28th. Any other committees meet since our
Yes.
last?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, the Engineering Committee met June 7th. Just briefly, we heard a presentation on the Wolf Pressure Reducing Station project that the board acted on this evening. Presentation on the Alora Improvements Project, with the issue there was a change of ownership. Sunrise Oryx Project update, and the Palisades Estates escrow agreement. And the meeting minutes will appear, I assume, in the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you, Director Elithart. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you. Yes, I was leaning over trying to check the calendar. The P3 committee met on June 7th. And I just want to shout out to our public awareness staff. They are exceptional. They are doing such a great job with the social media and contacting all of these customers that need to be contacted about the ag rates. They're really doing a great job. We talked a little bit about that issue. We also talked about sort of an educational push to try to get kids more interested in water, and how we can bridge the gap between elementary school, which we have an initiative going, as well as middle school, high school, and community colleges. And so hoping to have some new developments on that in the near future. It's really exciting. I think, the end goal is to get folks interested in water so that they will work in the water industry, because we have so many folks retiring. But in doing so, we're also going to, we're going to save the planet, right? I mean, more people are interested in water, more people are going to be interested in conserving water. So I think that we're really making some good progress there. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Director Boyd Hodgson. Any other committees that I missed? Okay. Director's reports on meetings, conferences, seminars attended. Anybody want to report out? I don't have anything to report out today. Director Elitharp, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I attended the Council of Water Utilities. I guess it's bi-monthly now. It's every other month, but that was on the 15th. I guess that was yesterday. Huh? Carrie Dale with the City of Oceanside, the Water Utilities Director, gave a presentation on Oceanside's Pure Water Program, which is it's an indirect potable reuse project that looks to take about 5,000 acre feet and inject it into their groundwater basin to improve condition of the basin, eventually draw that water out, treat it again for potable use. A very interesting project. They've gotten grant funding for it, and it should be online in early 2022. Very interesting presentation.
Great, thank you. Director Hernandez.
Yes, I attended the same meeting, a great presentation, very informative, and just spurred my continual interest in either having that done in our own district or pushing Encina to do a pilot program. So stay tuned for that.
Okay. Any other report outs? I don't see any hands, so we'll move on. There's no other business, so we'll go to director's comments, future agenda items. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you. You know, one of the things that was a benefit of receiving all of these reserve policies is I noticed that some of our neighbors have administrative codes. And I know that that is something that I have been interested in the past. I know that we are working very hard to pull together all of our policies and resolutions to figure out what's active and what's not. But I would like to have agendized the development of an administrative code. And I also know that the California Special Districts Association has a template of policies, and I know Glenn and his team are working very hard to get that sample handbook together. But I think having an administrative code would improve at least, you know, me as a new board member. It helped me better understand how to do my job, and would be, you know, would set some guidances for that would be easy for me to just look at and understand regarding board practices, best practices, and things like that. So I would like to see that agendized in, you know, it's not urgent, but in the near future, a discussion about how we would go about building that or putting that together.
Okay. That sounds good. It's got my support. So if you're looking for a consensus, Glenn, for a future board item, I think I saw some heads shaking.
Okay.
So if anybody has any thoughts, or I don't see any concerns, so let's do it. Okay. Any other board member comments, future agenda items? Hearing none. We are all the way down to item 6.1, and that is adjournment. So I just want to thank all of my colleagues tonight for all your hard work and effort, and then of course our wonderful staff. And thank you to the members of the community. It looks like we might have one or two out there that have joined us. We always appreciate having you come to our meetings and participate. So thank you. Have a wonderful evening, everybody.